In the cold, dark depths of the Atlantic lies the Bismarck. Once a symbol of unmatched power and German pride, now it's a silent wreck, slowly breaking apart. More than 80 years after it sank, its story still fascinates people. But one question remains: who sank the Bismarck? Join us as we dive into the hunt and discover the truth behind this famous ship. May 27, 1941. The mighty battleship Bismarck sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, marking the end of a brutal chase and the fall of one of the most iconic warships of World War II. This powerful battleship was named after Otto von Bismarck, one of the most important figures in German history. Bismarck was a first Chancellor of the German Empire and was known as the Iron Chancellor. He was a man who united Germany in the 19th century and transformed it into a powerful nation. Just as Otto von Bismarck stood for strength and determination, the battleship was a floating symbol of German power and dominance at sea. More than 80 years later, the wreck lies broken and forgotten nearly 15,750 feet deep, silent, cold, and dark. A ghost ship, far from the sunlight and the world above water. During World War II, the Atlantic Ocean was a vital lifeline for the Allies. Ships carried food, weapons, and troops across the sea. The German Navy, the Kriegsmarine, wanted to cut off this important supply route. The Bismarck was built as the ultimate battleship, a floating fortress designed to destroy enemy convoys and dominate the seas. At 820 feet long, armed with 12 15-inch guns, and manned by nearly 2,200 crew members, it was a formidable force. Its mission was to head west into the Atlantic and disrupt Allied shipping. The British Navy knew the Bismarck was a serious threat. If it succeeded, it could have disastrous consequences for the Allied war effort. Britain put everything into stopping it. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and aircraft were all sent after the Bismarck. It became a race against time. The hunt was on. On May 19th, the Bismarck left Wilhelmshaven, accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen. Their goal? Attack Allied shipping and create chaos. The British Admiralty went on high alert, sending HMS Hood, their flagship, along with HMS Prince of Wales to intercept the Bismarck. Over the following days, reconnaissance planes scoured the seas, searching for the German battleship. It was a tense cat-and-mouse game in the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic. HMS Hood, Britain's proudest and largest warship, engaged the Bismarck. But German firepower was devastating. A shell hit Hood's ammunition magazine, causing a massive explosion. Within minutes, the ship sank, taking 1,415 of its 1,418 crew with it. The loss was a heavy blow to the British Navy, but also gave them even more determination to stop the Bismarck. On May 23rd, a British reconnaissance plane finally spotted the Bismarck. The chase was underway. But what followed was one of the most dramatic naval chases in modern history. The moment the Bismarck was spotted near the Denmark Strait, the entire British home fleet mobilized. Naval bases from Scapa Flow to Gibraltar were thrown into action. British ships altered course. Fuel tankers were dispatched to sea. Intelligence rooms buzzed with decoded Enigma messages and frantic plotting on maritime charts. Everyone knew, if the Bismarck escaped into the open Atlantic, it could destroy countless supply ships and tilt the war at sea. Across vast distances, in treacherous weather, dozens of British vessels spread out across the ocean like a giant net. Some had no idea where the Bismarck really was. They simply sailed to positions where she might appear. Radio silence from the German ship only added to the tension. It became a battle of patience, pressure, and prediction. Meanwhile, on board the Bismarck, Morale was high, but the situation was far from calm. After the stunning destruction of HMS Hood on May 24th, Bismarck had taken some hits herself. Fuel tanks had been damaged, and the ship was leaking oil. Captain Ernst Lindemann and Admiral Gunther Lütjens debated their next move. Should they continue raiding convoys, or retreat to the safety of occupied France for repairs? They chose the latter. But the British had picked up traces of that oil leak in the water. Ships like HMS Suffolk and HMS Norfolk used radar, still a relatively new technology, to shadow the Bismarck from a distance. They didn't engage directly. Their mission was to stay hidden, stay close, and report her position minute by minute. It was a dangerous game. If the Bismarck turned and fired, these cruisers would be easily outgunned. British pilots, flying long reconnaissance flights in freezing conditions, were constantly searching the waves below. Visibility was often poor, clouds hung low, and yet the pressure never let up. Even civilian radio stations interrupted programming to broadcast appeals for sightings. The Germans, meanwhile, tried to lose their pursuers. On several occasions, the Bismarck sharply changed course under the cover of night, or attempted to jam British radio signals. The Prince Eugen, low on fuel and no longer needed, slipped away undetected and returned to Brest. Bismarck was now alone. Then, on May 25th, something unexpected happened. The British lost her. A navigational error by HMS King George V and HMS Victorious sent the main British force sailing hundreds of kilometers in the wrong direction. For over 24 hours, the Bismarck disappeared from Allied radar and visual tracking. It looked like she might escape after all. In London, Winston Churchill was furious. He issued one simple order: sink the Bismarck at all costs. The British redoubled their efforts. A last-ditch aerial search was launched from the aircraft carrier Ark Royal, whose outdated Swordfish biplanes would soon prove pivotal. On May 26th, a patrolling Catalina flying boat from the Royal Air Force finally spotted the Bismarck again. This time, there would be no escape. The Bismarck tried to sail to a safe port in France for repairs, but the British wouldn't let it escape. Brave pilots from the Fleet Air Arm launched torpedo attacks with slow, vulnerable biplanes called Swordfish. Despite heavy fire, one torpedo hit the Bismarck's rudder, causing serious damage. The battleship became almost uncontrollable and drifted helplessly in the open ocean. With the Bismarck disabled, the British fleet closed in for the final attack. On May 27th, battleships opened fire. Cannons roared, shells exploded, and the sea churned with destruction. The Bismarck suffered heavy damage. Its fire control and communications were destroyed. The crew was confused and exhausted. Eventually, the crew abandoned the ship, and the Bismarck sank to the ocean floor. Of nearly 2,200 crew members, only 115 survived the disaster. Their stories are ones of fear, courage, and survival against all odds. Politically, the sinking was a major victory for the Allies and a turning point in controlling the Atlantic. The hunt for the Bismarck became a legendary example of naval warfare, strategy, and technology. The wreck of the Bismarck still lies nearly 15,750 feet below the ocean surface, a ghost ship in the cold, dark depths. Researchers have visited the site multiple times with underwater vehicles and robots. They've seen massive damage to the hull. The ship is broken, the guns destroyed, but parts remain recognizable. The wreck is a war grave and a silent reminder of the cost of conflict. The hunt for the Bismarck shows that even the most powerful machines are vulnerable. It's a story of technology, strategy, and the human spirit in war. The wreck lies still and deep, but the legend of the Bismarck lives on in history books, films, and memory. The ocean hides its secrets, but we keep searching, uncovering the past. The Bismarck was a masterpiece of steel and fire and a reminder of loss and destruction. Now it rests quietly in the deep, a legend of the ocean. Subscribe to Archive of the Deep and join us on the next dive into the stories waiting beneath the waves.